It's time for the main event. Here comes the breakdown. Act 1, the setup.
Our film begins the same way as many of the lower budget films we've talked about on this show, with a laundry list of studios who all scrape together the change in the couch cushions to make this masterpiece a reality. There were 7, in case you were wondering, which ate up almost 2 minutes of screen time in a 95-minute long film.
If you
They show all the studio logos, and then the opening credits are the studio logo or the studio names again.
Yeah,
you just saw.
Which I get. So like, they do that because like the version of the film that they show to buyers is that version with just the black.
Yeah.
With the name.
With the names.
But then they put in all those damn studio logos, and like. One of them was the writer, one of them was the cinematographer, and one of them was the director. And then, of course, Nick Cage is Saturn Films. So it's like, really? So like every principal member of the crew gets their own like opening.
I saw that one of them was Saban Films or whatever, which
Saban.
is the guy who made Power Rangers originally. Not made, but brought it to the U.S.
Brought it to the States.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess kind of made. took
Pretty
those
famous
old Japanese
studio
stock footage and made a show out of it for American kids. I've been watching some of the old original Power Rangers, and they're terrible. My parents are saints for putting up with me being obsessed with that show when I was a kid, because it is horrible.
I hated that show so much when I was a kid, because I was like, this is the replacement for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? This is crap. This is garbage.
Yeah,
and like
see
even
that.
then I was like, this sucks.
I was 4 or 5 or so. I think I was 5 when it came out. So I was like right where it was awesome. And I never really got into TMNT because I was too young. But yeah,
I was like 10 or 11, and I could tell it was absolute trash.
It's horrible. Well, at least there's a Netflix revival now.
I know, dude. I'm stoked.
It's surreal. We open on a man about to be hanged by a mercantile shop owner who rambles on about how he was blessed by a higher power since he owns a store or some shit. So I guess that makes it okay for him to hang people. It's the Old West.
Old West, man.
Or modern day Idaho. Meanwhile, a debonair stranger with a comically ridiculous mustache watches on. By the way, the preacher guy was played by the actress who played Brooke's dad. So that's the
who played Brooke, her dad. Her dad.
The actress who played Brooke's dad.
Yeah.
The acting coach, I guess.
Yeah, he runs a school of some sort for kid actors. So makes sense that she became a kid actor.
Some guy tells Cage's character, Colton Briggs, that the brother of the guy who is about to be hung might be coming in to save them, while the hanging guy tries to get his son to leave and not watch him die. If only that kid had listened, we'd be spared the next 90 minutes of goofy grins from a complete wet blanket of an antagonist. Suddenly, hanging guy's brother starts blasting everyone with a shotgun while a couple other guys join in. Colton, stone-faced, stands there for a while with his mustache blowing in the wind before he draws his gun and takes out the bulk of the bad guys. A rider slices off the rope holding the hanging guy, saving him from the noose, while Colton pulls a wad of cash off that snarky mercantile guy who is now bleeding to death on the ground. Colton tells him,
"You owe me more."
Heads into his shop and takes the rest of the money he's owed, presumably from the register, before saying,
"Paid in full."
Remember those 2 throwaway lines because they basically are the plot of the entire film. Yeah. In this confusing scene, I don't know what was up. The scene was really...
I think
it's kind of hard to keep track of what was going on.
Yeah. Also, budget constraints, because this is actually the same town as the end of the movie, just redressed. But this was shot first, and they actually had enough coverage for this, according to the director. But they didn't have enough coverage for the ending of the movie. So it seems like you probably would have wanted to film the climax of the movie first before.
The most expensive bit.
Seems like they kind of filmed it in sequence a little bit.
I guess the hanging guy isn't happy to be still alive. And with Colton killing his brother. So he grabs a rifle, but Colton guns him down before he can even finish a sentence while his Opie-looking son watches on in horror. Colton heads off down the dusty trail, and we cut to 20 years later where he somehow looks younger. Guess that mustache wasn't doing him any favors. Don't they usually the younger version of a character in a show has no facial hair, and then they add facial hair to make him look older, and they did the reverse, and that's why they gave him this mustache, and then now he's clean shaven.
Yeah, he starts out kind of gruff and old looking, and then he's dressed, spiffy and has nicely coiffed hair and is clean shaven. So that's the movie version of let's make them young, but it's 20 years later.
I guess they were going for he's good now, so he doesn't have a mustache.
Yeah,
only bad
people
hair.
have mustache, man.
Yeah. Does that opening scene take place in Wyoming? I don't remember because I was trying to paste because he said something about sinners sure as hell don't go to Wyoming before he hangs the guy. So I thought that's what it was telling us, that it took place in Wyoming.
I'm not sure. I kind of lost track because this is the main part of the film is definitely in Montana. But it was when Montana became incorporated, because the marshal talks about how Colton can't run around killing people anymore because he's in a state now. And Montana, I feel like Montana and Wyoming were kind of two territories that were kind of together at the same time, but I don't know, man. I lost track. I wanted to count Wyoming when I first did the film, but I can't confirm.
Okay.
It was all filmed in Montana, so
we just have Montana and Colorado confirmed for this movie.
Oh yeah, Colorado. That's right. Fuck.
Yeah, because they go to Denver at one point.
That's right.
The climax is in Denver.
Santa Rosa.
Oh, Santa Rosa. That's
Rosa.
it. They mentioned near Denver,
which is 2 days from Denver, apparently.
Yeah. Right.
I don't think it actually exists, but I'm not positive.
I was hoping we could add Wyoming to the list. That's why I was wondering.
Do you guys think that we had Wyoming? I don't know.
It's you can't confirm it. It's all I noticed from that line when he says, sinners sure as hell don't go to Wyoming, and or wherever it is sinners end up, and he says sure as hell isn't Wyoming, which I took to mean they're in Wyoming for that opening scene, because I don't know why else he'd say that.
Okay. Oh man, I don't want to devote 3 states to this.
I don't know what else we're gonna get Wyoming in there, so it might be our only chance.
Yeah, true. Shoehorn in, baby.
Continue.
I'll just say the first part takes place in Wyoming. No one's going to care or question us on it.
That's true. That is true.
We see a lovely homestead in Montana where Colton has settled down and left the gunslinger life behind him and now dresses like a dork. We see his wife Ruth hanging clothes while she watches on dotingly, and she laments for the mustache rides of yore. Oh, how it just tickled her right.
Fuck.
She asks him to walk their daughter Brooke to school since she needs to finish hanging the laundry, much to his chagrin. He grumpily walks her to school, and the Little House on the Prairie theme song starts playing. Now, they just argue about whether they should have taken their sad old horse rather than walk. But of course, if they had just taken the horse, we wouldn't have had a second and third act. At the school,
I guess they would have. I don't know. They wouldn't have, he would have taken Brooke home, right?
Yeah, because he would have had the horse.
Took her home.
They had an argument because he says, we don't have enough time to saddle the horse and then get to town. And she says, well, if you just taken the horse, it would have saved all the time we're spending walking, so you'd have enough time to double back. And he checks his watch, which is a recurring thing.
Yeah, what was with that, by the way?
His reoccurring watch thing is he's always looking at his wife's face.
It's his wife's portrait at the end. So it's her giving him advice, basically. Which I thought was a nice little reveal.
Yeah.
It makes it seem like he's just checking the time, because it's like, well, maybe he's just really anal about time management.
I just wish he didn't do that stupid look he gives when he opens the watch.
much.
What are you looking at?
I think it was like he's supposed to. It kind of felt like maybe he's like autistic a little bit. Like he's always checking the time and keeping track of things, and then we find out he basically has no emotions. So it's like thing. But then they add a nice little twist at the end where there's more meaning to it. But
there was a thing, and the director talked about of like what drew him to the project initially was basically you have two characters who are on the spectrum, who are the main characters in a Western. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the crux of it, was like them finding love in each other, even though they have no emotions.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's 100% true.
In a better movie that could have come through a little better. I could definitely see that. I just don't think the execution was quite there.
Again, I think it was time constraints. I would imagine it was fleshed out much better in the original script. But
anyway, at the school, we find out that Brooke's teacher is sick, so she has to spend the day working with her dad at the store, which I guess he's also pissed about for some reason, even though I think he'd be fine with it. We don't really get a sense at this point that he doesn't really care about his daughter. I mean, I guess this is the sense of it. Like, he doesn't want to hang out with her or anything like that.
He doesn't want to have to babysit her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's see, just shoot her, but I guess that comes later. Ironically, Colton became a mercantile like that dude from the opening, and I guess he's hung dozens of thieves from his own sign over the years.
It's because you're blessed with a higher power if you own a store.
Yeah, you can kill whoever you want. It steals from you.
Maybe that guy was Jeremiah Sands' distant relative.
He tells his daughter to sit at the table and shut up while a dirty fat guy rambles on incessantly about his mom eating ingredients to bake a cake for the church potluck and how the apples in their backyard taste like shit since the tree was planted by an outhouse, as Colton stares at him like he wants to blast the guy in the face just like in the old days. I think we all want to.
Yeah.
Listen to this guy's asinine story.
It's funny because it's like he's this cold-blooded murderer who has, lived this life of violence, and then he settled down just because he loves that woman so much, and then he has to be forced to listen to asinine stories from these fucking people.
I mean, if you've got a problem with killing people, you shouldn't get a job in customer service, because you 100% kill people.
This is when I text you guys, is this movie supposed to be a comedy?
Yeah. Just that look on his face is so great.
One of my Coppola or Cage's moments is just his stares at different people.
The dirty fat guy says his mom needs some flour, so Colton heads upstairs to get it, and the guy uses his dirty shit-covered hands to steal some jelly beans, but quickly puts them back when he realizes Colton's daughter saw him steal from a notorious murderer. He's gonna need to just throw that whole jar out. But maybe this was before germ theory, so they don't know to do that.
Ugh.
She snitches on the guy the second he walks out of the store, so Colton tasks her with cleaning them up, so she Rain Mans the fuck out of the jelly beans. Sorts them all by color, cleans them one at a time, and sorts them all into individually colored jars. While we watch the whole process. For some reason.
They said they wanted to set up her head space, like, so we could get to know that she is, OCD and and obviously Colton is too.
Mm-hmm. Pygmies.
Is he stalking any prefects behind the counter?
Oh shit, man.
Back home, Ruth is visited by a fun little gang of outlaws led by James McAllister, a.k.a. Opie from the beginning. Yep, that stupid kid with the dumb face is our antagonist. He asks her if she and his companions can rest at her house, and we see that Opie has a couple of buddies named Boots and Big Mike who creepily follow her as she tries to get inside the house. And Big Mike was played by the guy who played Jerry on ER, which I was totally distracted by the whole time because I haven't seen that guy in anything ever since that show, and I watched that show for years. So I was like, oh my God, it's Jerry.
He seems to be in a lot of these kind of like small budget films nowadays.
It's pretty good. He's great in ER, so it was nice to see him again after all these years.
I will say, like, one strong point of this movie is like each one of the like side characters feels like a fleshed out character. They don't feel like just cookie cutter Western guys. Like each one of them seems to have their own motivations and a sense of purpose.
They felt more rounded out than the antagonist did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's probably the strength of the actors that play them, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Clint Howard never phones in a performance, and it's always just some goofy guy. But
Clint Howard, is always weird as hell, but he's always great. No matter what role he's in, he's memorable as hell in anything he does. I mean, he's always great.
Yeah. Which is great. Great for him.
Yeah.
It's gotta be weird living in your brother's shadow like that, but like still making your own, but you're also like this
thing,
goofy looking guy. And so you just sort of, you don't coast on that, but that's sort of his thing. I don't know. It's a lot of respect for Clint Howard.
Yeah.
She tells them their husband will be along anytime, but James says he just saw him in town with a little girl, and they all giggle at the thought of a grown man walking a girl to school, while she gets increasingly more uncomfortable. As they get closer to her, she tosses the laundry at Big Mike and tries to head inside, but is met by the most frightening sight imaginable, Clint Howard. It's the ice cream man.
I'm glad that you guys know the ice cream man, because I feel like that's such a lost.
I was watching it on Riff Tracks the other day.
Were you really?
There's a Riff Tracks channel on Pluto, and so I put it on as background noise, and it was on.
That's hilarious. Dude.
That movie is so fucked up, and he is so creepy in that movie. And hilarious at the same time.
Mm-hmm. She knees Clint, a.k.a. Eustace, which is like the perfect name for Clint Howard in a Western. Knees him in the junk and hightails it toward the family barn. They follow her into the barn where there's some alpacas and some weird thing monster. I don't know. Reminded me of the barn from Color Out of Space, just in case anybody doesn't know. They follow her into the barn while Eustace tries to convince James they need to leave the girl alone or else they might get caught by a marshal that is apparently on their trail. Boots tells him to shut his damn mouth with a gun to his face, so I'm guessing they're not super fond of having that creepy guy from the Ice Cream Man in their gang. Ruth charges out towards them on a horse, but before she can get away, James guns down the horse and Boots pistol whips her. Inside the barn, James spots Colton's saddle and decides to send him a message. Ruth tells them they're in for a world of hurt, and when the rest of the gang find out she's the wife of Colton Briggs, they're terrified. She goes on to say they hit her in the face, broke her arm, and shot Colton's horse, so you boys have woke up the devil. Jimmy laughs in her face while the rest of them shit their pants, but James says he owes Colton a debt, and we cut to Colton and Brooke closing up shop at the Mercantile. Brooke asks why her mom didn't come to get her, and Colton realizes that something's wrong since she should have come back to get her if the school was closed, right?
No, she's going to pick her up after school.
That's right. And if she's school, and she would have seen the school was closed and come over to the store and ask what the hell happened. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Two of them head home only to find the aforementioned Marshal and his men making themselves at home inside Colton's house. The Old West, where you could just pop into someone else's house, eat their food, make a fire. Marshall's probably wearing Colton slippers. Yeah. Well, to be fair, he thought the whole family had been murdered, so why not just make yourselves at home?
I guess. Yeah.
Marshall apologizes for moving into his house and using his toothbrush, and then suddenly recognizes Colton. He's shocked to see Colton has settled down and eventually lets him know that Ruth is dead. Next, we see Colton digging a grave for his wife in the yard while his daughter watches from the porch with the Marshal. He tells her that her mom must have been an amazing woman if she was able to tame the violent psychopath she calls her dad. He says Colton was the meanest son of a bitch he ever met and would look at people like he was looking through them. Exactly what a young girl wants to hear after her mom's been murdered. He goes on to say that her only tether to this world now is that now that her mom is dead, is an evil, violent man who killed people without even breaking a sweat. So she just asks what we're all thinking. Why are you telling me this? And he says, for exposition. Actually, he says, I just want you to understand how good a woman your mama was. She took the coldest killer I've ever met and turned him into a family man. Then she says, why don't you just tell me what's going on in plain English without the mumbo jumbo? You know, like from The Family Man.
Please just tell me what's happening to me in plain English without the mumbo jumbo.
Brooke says she's never even seen her father hold a gun, and the marshal says that's because he's a good man now. By the way, like a minute from now, he almost blasts his daughter in the face, but never mind that. She asks the marshal if her father's still a good man now that her mom's dead, and he just looks at her dumbfounded.
From the yard, he's like, she took my bell.
Just shoveling dirt onto her.
That'd be when he's pointing the gun at her and she wakes up. Took my bell.
You took my bell.
Next, we see Colton hammering at a cross to mark his wife's grave. Seems kind of messed up to put the grave like 3 feet from the porch, but whatever. It's fertilizer now. The marshal asks if he should say a few words, and Colton says,
You said plenty of words. None of them helped.
the marshal tells him his wife's killer's left a mess in the barn, so he might want to whip out a garden hose before his daughter sees it.
Just hose that down real quick.
Spray that shit down.
Oh, by the way, see ya.
Isn't that kind of your job to clean up the murder scene?
Yeah, no, we just eat your food.
Fuck that. It's gross, man.
Start a fire and eat your food and track mud all through your house. We're taking off.
Took a dump in your toilet. Still in there. Sorry. I didn't know that you didn't have a flusher.
They left you off protector. Sorry, cool.
Me and my boys ain't never seen no plumbing before. We thought you're supposed to sit up on the upper part. Colton asks for the names of the men who did this after the marshal says he's got a good idea where they're headed, but he'd rather the world never see old Colton Briggs again. Briggs asks again for the names, but the marshal says his daughter needs the man she knows and loves rather than the murderous nutcase he used to be. He finishes by saying he'll make sure Ruth's killers pay the price, and as long as Colton's little girl is alive, there's no room for vengeance in his life. Which is a poor choice of words. The marshal
shouldn't say that to the cold-blooded killer.
Yeah. The marshal and his men head off into the night while Colton investigates the mess in the barn where he sees her bloody handprint on his saddle, which makes him break down in tears. Then he spots a message on the wall in his wife's blood that says, I owe you more, echoing what Colton said to the mercantile at the beginning of the film.
Remember that throwaway thing?
Wait, that's what that was referenced to?
Yeah.
Why? Because it was his dad he said it to before he killed him. Or no, it was the mercantile he said it to.
So the mercantile, he didn't even. It wasn't even talking to his dad.
Yeah, exactly. Like he was saying what? Wait, is he the? Oh my God, that's the twist. Is he's the other guy's kid?
Yeah, he's the guy who was hanging. Yeah,
no. He was the mercantile guy's kid.
Mercantile's kid.
That's the twist.
Didn't realize. He was watching from the window the whole time.
He didn't actually shoot that guy. He left that guy alive. It just took the money and left.
Well, I
didn't even realize he was a criminal. Like, to be honest, I thought he was I thought he was like some hired gun that.
No, I don't think he was
or something.
I think he was just a hired gun, and
he's like, "Oh, you didn't pay me enough, so I'm not saving your life."
He's a gunslinger, bro.
Yeah,
I'm thinking that this mercantile paid a bounty to him to bring this guy in, and that's right. He was owed that money.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Anyways, we're explaining the plot of the movie that is supposed to explain it to the audience.
They should have just had the marshal explain everything because he did a pretty good job.
He did really good. I like that actor. Talk.
Yeah, I like that actor. I don't know, I've ever seen him in anything, but he did a pretty good job in this.
Only westerns.
Yeah.
We should just have him narrate the whole movie while we're watching it.
He's the white Morgan Freeman.
Then Colton tells her to go, wham, wham, my baby.
Act 2, The Conflict.
Later that night, Colton sobs over his dearly departed for a few seconds before busting out his long-neglected killing box from a chest or something in the living room. He just keeps his guns right there in the living room.
It's their their coffee table.
Didn't baby-proof that house very well. He quickly loads a revolver and says to himself,
As long as she's alive.
then heads up to the loft to unload the only remaining burden in his life. Brooke wakes up to see her maniac dad pointing a gun at her head and says, Mama wouldn't like you pointing that gun at me. That's her like go-to, is like every time her dad does something insane, she's like, Mama wouldn't really like you to do that. And he's like, oh yeah, I shouldn't kill people. Shouldn't shoot my daughter.
Marshal helpfully told her the only reason he does anything is because her mama made his life better.
True.
Mama said not to shoot me, Daddy.
Colton comes to his senses and puts the gun away while Brooke just goes back to sleep like nothing even happened. Just go right back to bed.
It's the Wild West.
She kind of mentions later on that like this is the moment where she started feeling dead inside, which makes sense, but at the same time, she kind of also makes it seem like she's felt that way since she was a child as well. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. That she's always wondered what was wrong with her because she can't act normal either.
Yeah. I think it's the culminate. It echoes what Colton tells her when his mom had died or his parents died or whatever, and he didn't feel anything. And that's what kind of made him realize he was really fucked up. Maybe that's her, like, I guess it's there when she asks the marshal, like, why am I not crying or whatever? My mom's dead and I don't really feel anything. Like, what the hell's wrong with me? Doesn't she say something like that? Like, am I a bad person?
He says
not
it.
Feeling it? Oh,
the marshal is like, you think that was strange that she didn't cry at all? Like, I shed more tears about her than she did.
Yeah.
I didn't even know the woman. He comes back upstairs after, almost killing his daughter and chucks a pair of pants at her and tells her to get dressed. A few minutes later, the two of them stand outside ready for vengeance, and Colton burns the house and the barn down, which really kind of fucks over Brooke later in life.
Just like
he's going back to the old way.
He's like, we're never coming back, but it's like, well, what if you die, Dad? I need to be able to come back home somewhere.
Well, she's still got the mercantile. She can live there for a minute.
She's got the mercantile. I guess there's an upstairs. She can sleep on a bag of flour.
Yeah.
Or downstairs with the jelly beans.
I'm guessing that's what happens at the end. That's part of my couple of questions is like, what happens to Brooke after everything? And like, how does she spend that money that's from Mexico? So we'll get to it. There. She just heads to Mexico.
She starts a small restaurant, Casa Bonita.
Yeah. Outside of Denver.
Which, like, okay, I didn't really think about it until just now, but like, it feels like they followed them for like 2 days and they went from Montana to Colorado.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that till right now. Anyways, since they only have one horse, Brooke tells her dad they'll never catch up to the bad men unless they get another. And he says, well, we'll find another along the way. We'll just murder somebody for it.
Yeah, just take it. It's like Red Dead Redemption.
Yep. They both watch emotionless as their old life burns away before heading on down the dusty trail. Just a couple on the spectrum sociopaths trying to make their way in this wicked world.
To go back to your other thing, that's part of why I also thought this took place in Wyoming, not Montana, because Wyoming's next to Colorado. So
that does make sense.
They were right across the border. They could have potentially gotten to Denver in maybe 2 days.
If you look at the map from, I don't know what time this actually happens. I'm assuming like around the turn of the century. I wonder where Montana ended. Maybe it actually stretched into.
Let's see. When did Colorado become a state? That was 1876. So this is probably the 1880s.
Okay.
Because also Eustis is wearing a Confederate
so it's
uniform like he was a younger man during the Civil War.
When did Montana become incorporated, though?
They never say that Colorado is a state. They say that Montana is a state.
Okay, statehood in Montana. Doing more research than they did for. That was 1889.
Okay, so Colorado was the state before Montana. But like, what was the border of Montana at that time?
Yeah, I don't
Did
know.
it stretch down to Colorado? Maybe Wyoming was incorporated into Montana territory or something.
Maybe there's the Montana territory. I don't know. This is too much work for this movie. Who cares?
Anyways,
I guarantee you they didn't even do this much research.
I mean, you can get from Montana to Colorado in 2 days, apparently.
Right.
On horse.
Yeah, on a horse
Half
back.
of it you're just walking. Anyways, the next morning, Brooke asks why he burned up all her clothes and school books, since she'll presumably need those once her teacher is no longer sick. And he explains that they're never going back. He says as soon as he finishes what he has to do, they'll find a new place and will replace everything she lost aside from her deep-seated fear that her dad will one day kill her in her sleep. She says he can replace everything except Mama. And for a brief moment, they drop their cyborg expressions and both seem to have emotions. She seems like their mom or her mom is the only like emotional like driving force for either of them, really. And now that she's gone, they're both just robots.
Yeah.
Or as they said back then, robots. They stop for a rest, and Colton asks his daughter for her oversized belt. So she asks, "Are you gonna whoop me?" What a charming relationship they seem to have. So, like the only times that he ever interacted with her over all these years was just to beat her. He takes the belt and tells her to get 30 minutes of sleep, and says they'll do that every 4 hours until they catch Opie and his gang. Like, it really is. I glossed over how fucking far that would be.
Yeah,
how many days it would take.
Does it say that they're in Montana at some point?
Yeah, it says that they're. Yeah,
because I missed that, and I just assumed they were in Wyoming the whole time, and that was like, it's close enough that it could.
I thought they were in Wyoming,
but they had to go all the way from Montana down through Wyoming to get down to at least Denver.
Is he? Yeah, he makes it clear that they're in Montana when they round up the sheriffs.
That's why I'm wondering if like Montana was bigger, you know, because remember those states used to be huge back in the good old days when they first got incorporated, and then they slowly changed borders over time.
And if they had just been incorporated, the borders probably hadn't been defined just yet, I would imagine.
Yeah.
They were probably still carving everything out.
So it's possible that he was in Wyoming, but it was Montana territory at the time. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm trying to explain away the fact it took them 2 days to fucking catch up to these people.
4 days
from
more
Montana to Colorado.
4 days more of shooting may have cleared it up.
Yeah, it's true.
They could have tacked on 2 more days of their ride. They had 4 days of shooting.
He tells her it's not enough that they find the men. They need to be ready to kill them, so they'd better get their rest. You see, back then, this guy was a ruthless killer since he hardly feels emotions. But nowadays, he'd be a CEO or of a Fortune 500 or in Congress. Back then, he was just kind of a outcast. But
God damn it.
We cut to the marshal and his men, where he asks if the little girl seems strange since she barely reacted to her mom being dead. He goes on to say he never even met the woman, and he cried more about her death than her own hollow-eyed children of the corn daughter. They reckon she was just shocked by the news and not an emotionless monster like her dad. Meanwhile, James and his men ambush the posse from the cliffs above, and the marshal is shocked to find he and his men have wandered into an obvious trap. I mean, you know, the oldest trick in the book is just high ground. Yeah. I guess, you know, they're hot on the trail of these dudes, but Yeah, you would think you'd be watching out in these types of situations. Several of the marshal's men are shot in the melee, but when James realizes Colton isn't with them, he and his boys break off the fight. He's also mad that they didn't shoot the marshal first and that they jumped the gun and just started shooting random dudes and wanted to get rid of the marshal first. You know,
the only competent one who's in the posse.
Yeah. Back at the Briggs camp, Brooke wakes up to find her psychopath dad staring at her dead-eyed while she sleeps. Almost as scary as waking up to Clint Howard. He says he heard gunshots coming from across the canyon, which, like, okay, so again with the timeline, how did he catch up to them so fast? I mean, I guess they left only a couple hours behind them, but they would have been multiple hours behind James McAllister and his group of dudes.
They probably posted up shortly after leaving to set up that ambush to make sure they got there before they got to Colorado. So I can understand that.
She asks why he didn't wake her to head towards the shots, and he says,
No reason to hurry. Gunshots might have a way of speeding some folks up, but they have a nasty habit of slowing other folks down.
What does that mean?
Whatever. I don't know what that means. Maybe because they get shot?
Yeah, or dead. But then it's like, what if the people you're trying to catch are the ones that got slowed down or sped up? Shouldn't you speed up to catch the people?
Man, no reason to hurry. Gunshots might have a way of speeding some folks up. They have a nasty habit of slowing other folks down. What's so hard to understand? He gives her back her belt and they head towards the canyon. Back with the gang, James smacks Boots for not shooting the marshal first and says he's gone to enormous pain to have Colton Briggs come find them. But Boots left a perfectly good lawman between them. What enormous, I guess killing the woman.
I guess scheduling, figuring out this whole thing, figuring out where Colton lives because he's sort of not known anymore.
Yeah, I guess so.
Orchestrating this whole thing because we know his ultimate plan is to eventually flee down to Mexico or something. So he's, had his plan years in the making, I guess.
Yeah. Well, he was in jail for a lot of that time. How did he figure out where Colton was? I mean, Colton never changed his name, but back in those days, you could just move to the state over and nobody would ever hear from you again. So
clearly Colton wasn't using Surfshark to protect himself.
Found him instantly online. Just a quick Google search.
Good to see him searching Facebook. Oh, there he is. He shaved his mustache, but he looks the same.
He opened up.
How is he not aged a day? This is crazy.
He's goddamn Dracula.
Might be in Catfished.
Then he calls him a puss in boots and then goofily laughs in his face while asking if he's working against him. And he's a puss. Boots recoils and says he just messed up and won't stop the evil killing machine on their trail from catching up with them, even though it will most certainly lead to their collective deaths, letting Colton catch up to them. It's funny because they all know who he is. There was one of them who didn't know who Colton was.
I think it was a younger guy.
Was it Boots?
Boots.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Boots. Yeah, both Mike and Eustace knew.
Oh, yeah, Eustace and
been around for a while.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Brooke and Colton happen upon an injured deputy, and when Colton tells her he needs the guy's horse, Brooke tells him, Mama wouldn't like you killing no lawman, and suggests they try a different tactic. He also looks at his watch there to see what Ruth would do. What would Ruth do? He's got that "What would Jesus do" bracelet. It's just in his pocket watch.
He's got a tattooed WWRD.
He tells her to wait in the trail and get the guy to stop by pretending to cry, and she says she doesn't know how. You know, since she's the offspring of the Terminator. Colton says, now you listen to me. People in this world expect you to act like they do. They expect you to laugh at their jokes and sigh at their babies and cry at their funerals. And if you can't learn how to do those things, they won't accept you. They'll push you out. Do you want to make it in this world? Do you want to fit in? Then you're going to have to figure out how to act like them. Then Brooke and Colton remove their faces, revealing that they're both animatronic robots, and it's revealed that this is secretly a spinoff of Westworld. You great. Ed Harris shows up. Next, he asks her if she remembers when the Parsons daughter died and how the girl's mother cried. Then he imitates someone crying over their dead daughter like they were morons for feeling emotions and tells Brooke to pretend to cry the same way. And he says, wah, wah, my baby, my baby. And she imitates him hilariously bad.
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah.
A little louder. Wah, wah, my baby, my baby.
Wah, wah, my baby, my baby.
Wah, wah, my baby. Might be my favorite moment of the movie.
Mine too.
She stands in the trail and the injured deputy saunters up on his horse to her going, wah, 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 my baby, like a robot. And is understandably confused. Honestly, was probably more of an effective distraction than if she actually cried.
Right. Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is happening?
Wah, 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 wah.
Okay, little girl.
Wah, my baby, wah.
Baby, what baby? What are you getting at?
Wah.
It's one of them witches they always be telling me about.
Just imagine happening upon that. Like, I don't know, you're just walking down an alley and there's some girl like standing stone faced staring at you going, wah, wah, my baby, my baby.
I've seen enough horror films. I'd turn around and get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, I'm out of here, man. Colton then puts a gun to the lawman's head and steals his horse. We cut to the marshal and one of his injured men still hiding out from the gang in the canyon. And the deputy we saw just get robbed of his horse shows up with Brooke holding a gun on him from behind. Colton appears out of nowhere and puts a gun to the marshal, who tells him he gets that he's upset, but he needs to let him and his men go. You haven't done it. You haven't committed any crimes you can't walk away from yet. That's the sweet cat.
Yeah.
Not that other one.
No, I don't notice. I don't have any posters behind me for him to tear off the wall.
Starts knocking the Funko Pops off there.
Knock the. He's moving the camera.
Moving the whole monitor. Come here.
Colton tells Brooke to grab one of the men's shotguns, and the guy says he'll blow this little girl's brains all over the valley. But quickly changes his tune when Brooke stomps on his broken leg. She tells her dad,
He cries pretty good. I'm gonna try to do it like him next time.
it's just, this is the creepiest scene from her.
Yeah.
Especially what's coming up here in a second. Colton ties everyone up and sharpens a knife by a fire while Brooke looks for firewood so Colton can heat up a rusty nail of some sort. I think it's like from the railroad or something.
Yeah.
One of those
like
big giant
spike.
nails. The marshal tries to reason with Briggs, saying he hasn't committed any crimes he can't walk away from, since he's probably assuming Colton's about to go medieval on their asses with that nail. The marshal says if he kills him, he'll have a level of trouble he's never encountered before. And Briggs says,
Are you sure about that?
so has Colton killed a marshal before?
Like was the
I'm
implication.
sure.
Yeah. I feel like...
or he's at least been on the run from marshals for something he did.
There's an insinuation that he's done some pretty messed up stuff back in the old times. Next, we see Colton emotionlessly jamming a hot nail through the marshal's head. That would have been great, though. The marshal tells him he's making his daughter an accessory by holding the men and not allowing them to go get medical attention. And Colton says, "No, you are, by not telling me what I need to know." Then he says, Hey, Briggs! Hey, Briggs! I'm too old for this shit.
There it is. Knew that joke was going to show up somewhere.
Yeah, I was wondering when you were going to make that joke.
Brooke returns with firewood, and Colton says, "Good, put it on the fire. We'll be ready to start soon." Some ominous, creepy stuff. The marshal tells him if anything happens to his men, he'll hunt down Briggs and kill him himself. And Colton says,
Like you hunted down the man who killed my wife?
I mean, they're trying to, but
they're trying.
You got him tied up here.
One of them got shot over it. The other one's got his leg broke.
I mean, to be fair, he just failed. True. The marshal just failed.
True.
Yeah.
It's like they're not going to be able to continue on the trail of this dude. They'd have to break off the search at that point. And if if Briggs wasn't there, you know, they probably would have gotten away.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Though James wants him to follow him the whole time. Anyway, it's all very confusing how he expected Colton to follow him. I guess he just knew that he was a great tracker, so he would find him eventually anyway.
I'm being smothered.
He tells Brooke to rip the shirt of the guy who was shot in the arm and tells her to put a stick in his mouth. Before he can get to work, the marshal tells Briggs the name of the man responsible for killing his wife, the men who ride with him, and that McAllister promised his gang a share of a lockbox that he has stashed somewhere. He says the gang busted out of prison and are headed to Colorado to a town named Santa Rosa, which is 2 days' ride outside of Denver, apparently. And
so maybe at this point, it just time jumps forward and they pass through all of Montana to get down to Santa Rosa. And we just don't see it or have a sense of that happening.
Yeah, what happens right after this one? Like, they don't actually catch up with the gang until Santa Rosa. So
yeah,
I guess we could just chalk it up to a time jump. Anyways, after spilling the beans, Colton gives him a thank you nod and then cuts the bullet out of the injured guy's arm and cauterizes the wound with the heated up nail, much to the marshal's surprise, which is why he gets to be buried a hero later on, by the way. When he burns the man's flesh, Brooks says,
"Smells like Mama's rabbit chops."
Oh, that's the whiskey.
Makes me hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Such a cute kid. Ugh. Colton tells the marshal if he gets to Santa Rosa and there's no James McAllister, he'll come back and kill them all. He says he's just going to leave them there.
Right.
And then he's going to ride all the way to Colorado. And then he's going to ride all the way back if James McAllister's not there. And kill them. It's all very confusing.
I've seen.
It's just like in Raising Arizona when he's like, hell with this. And when he's counting, and then he stands up and the car's coming back at him. They steal the marshal's horse, and Colton says he'll leave it tied up in Santa Rosa. The marshal yells after him that justice will find him while Brooke looks through him just like her dad. We cut to the gang digging up the previously mentioned lockbox buried in an old barn somewhere. The gang are pissed to find the cash is all from a Mexican bank, since I'm guessing the peso had about the same exchange rate back then that it does now. Sorry, Vince.
As
you have a lot of that Mexican money. Most of your money's tied up in that Mexican lockbox that you got.
Yeah, it's not such a great retirement
worth
$3.80
now.
One of these days, the Mexican economy will turn around.
One of these decades.
One of these decades. One of these centuries. James pulls
Maybe
a gun
the
on
cartels completely control everything there.
God,
yeah, it'll be
dude.
like Al Qaeda in Afghanistan.
You know how
cartels can run a business.
If the cartels ran that whole country, making money left and right, dude.
Yeah. James pulls a gun on them and says if he was crossing them, they'd already be dead. He says they need to lay low, and what better place to do that than in Mexico? And with the money they have, they can live like kings down there for as long as they want. He says that they got to hang out for like a year in Mexico.
It's one of those extradition-free countries.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like every movie. This trope.
Just go to Mexico.
Go to Mexico. Go to any Central American country. Mm-hmm. Be fine.
Be really easy to get lost in Mexico back then. You wouldn't stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. Whitest gringo.
White guys.
Yeah. I mean, Boots could fit in.
Young Guns,
Wasn't Boots kind
Boots
of a
good?
Hispanic-looking guy?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Probably doesn't speak Spanish, but...
Anyways, the gang again reluctantly decide to stick with their scumbag of a boss and are worried about Briggs catching up to them since they now have to stick with this douche to get their money. He does say that like they did all split up right then, but they stick with him, and I find that kind of confusing. Of like, this dude is just a asshole who just like tells them what to do. He never does anything himself, including kill Colton. I mean, like he makes it a ultimatum of like, well, you either save your daughter or let me shoot you, or like, like the guy is a loser. Just leave him.
Yeah, but they want that money.
They could have taken it right now. He said, we could divide it up. He probably would have ended up killing them.
Yeah,
but
that's why I figured
that's why
the
they
threat
stayed,
was there.
because they knew he would shoot. He would shoot them.
But aren't they like better at it than he is? The guy
And
never shows any.
Yeah.
They could just like kill him right then and take the money. Anyways, McAllister says Briggs is hunting them, so the best course of action is to head exactly where he'll expect them to be in Santa Rosa so that they can ambush him, I guess. Mm-hmm. Which this was McAllister's, plan the entire time.
Right.
Get revenge on a guy who does not remember him in the slightest. Opie looking motherfucker. We cut to Colton and Brooks setting up camp. Colton pulls a cross from a grave for firewood, and when Brooks says it was on somebody's grave, he says, so? Nothing belongs to the dead because the dead don't need anything. Only living need to possess things. The living need food, water, shelter, clothes, family, money, land. I forget how he says it. He's real condescending about it. But the dead have everything they have already been tended to. Once they're put in the ground, they have all they need. They're not selfish. I like the dead. Apparently that was a Cage ad lib, the I like the dead thing, which I
that's pretty nice. I like it.
Really good, yeah.
Works for the actor.
That was my quote of the film, is that little monologue.
There's too many self-indulgent wieners among the
living. The gang ride into Santa Rosa, and Eustace again questions James's leadership, with them riding into town fully exposed. But McAllister reassures the gang by saying the sheriff is in Denver, which is at least 2 days' ride away. So it'll be at least 4 days before any law can come and arrest them. So I guess it would take 2 days to get over to Denver, then 2 days for the sheriff to come back.
Yeah.
Did they have telegrams back in these days? I guess not.
It did, but I don't know if the lines were there.
That's true.
From some podunk town like Santa Rosa.
Yeah. Again, it's like so it's 2 days ride to Denver, but it would have been probably at least a week ride from Montana, if not, twice that. I don't. But we just skipped over that.
Yeah.
He tells his men to set up guard around the edge of town and let him know if anyone rides in, anyone whatsoever, while he bangs some prostitutes. Dude seems like a real dick. Literally never does anything for himself. I hate this guy as a character. Maybe that's what we're supposed to.
Yeah, I don't think we're supposed to hate him. Like him.
But like he's so like arrogant and cocky about everything, and then he never shows any sign of being able to back up that cockiness. Not even at the end. Like nothing. Not at no point does this guy paint himself as like an actual badass. He says there's a devil inside of me and two devils can't live on this planet at the same time. It's like, dude, you think way too highly of yourself. Mm-hmm. Eustace takes first watch since he's, the creepy weirdo of the bunch, while the rest of the gang smash some whores, post up in the brothel with the lockbox. Back with Briggs, Brooke asks her dad about how he used to kill people, and that the marshal said Colton gave up his life of killing for Mama. I have to call her Mama. That's how she says it. Colton tells her that his entire life he knew he was different and theorized that he was an alien from another planet. No, wait, that's actually what Nicolas Cage said. He still says that sometimes. Like, I don't think I was ever born of this earth. Colton says he never cried or laughed as a baby, but got pretty good at pretending to not be a soulless sociopath by, acting like the other kids and stuff.
Yeah, this is just him talking about being an actor.
It's just Cage talking.
I got really good at making people think that I was good at expressing myself.
Yeah. He says he never felt fear, but saw it in the eyes of every man he ever met. He recounts a story of a man catching up to him in a bathhouse after Colton killed some of his friends, and the guy held a gun on him while Briggs was cold, naked, sitting in a tub, but the guy was too scared to shoot him. Probably intimidated by the python staring at him from in the bubble bath, just like poking up. Anyways, Colton just stood up, grabbed his gun, and killed the guy while little Colton watched on in terror. He continues this lovely bedtime story for his 12-year-old daughter and says that he felt like he had been born dead inside and he had never known fear once in his life until he met her mother. He breaks down as he recounts the fear he felt of her potentially not talking to him or loving him or becoming his wife, and the fear of losing her. He also says she was the only thing he ever feared and the only thing he ever loved, which is cool to say to your daughter, because your mom is the only thing I ever loved. Definitely not you.
Well, he did point a gun at her a couple nights ago. Yeah. So I think she already knows that.
Yeah. Brooke says she's also dead inside and feels completely lost, but her dad reassures her that she will someday, maybe, I guess. I don't know. She'll feel something again, which she does at the end, of course. I put it in your act, Vince, but like it'd be so funny if she was just like over the top of his dead body going, wham, wham, my baby, my baby. She asks if he knows the man who killed her mom, and he, of course, has no idea, since it could be any of the hundreds of kids he orphaned over the years. It's like he doesn't know what this dude looks like. He has no idea who it is at all.
Yeah.
Because it was probably a completely throwaway thing for him to say, paid in full and you owe me more, that whole thing. Why would I ever think of those words again?
Right.
Brooke then asks if he can teach her to shoot so we can usher in a new cold-blooded, soulless psychopath killer into the world. Just what we need.
Act 3. the resolution.
Back in Santa Rosa, we see that Eustace fell asleep while on watch, so anyone could just stroll into town. Not that it matters in the slightest. Meanwhile, Colton teaches Brooke how to shoot with a rifle, but it's too heavy for her, so she tries the pistol and manages to blast a couple holes in her hat. And her dad just seems pretty happy his daughter is following him into the family business, which is murdering people.
I think she's going to be great at it.
I think so too.
She's already got a leg up, you know. No
it's
emotions.
In her genes.
It's in her genes, man.
We cut to James chowing down at the brothel. Chowing down on food, that is. Not that other thing. Eustace comes in mad that those turkey bungholes never relieved him of duty last night.
I wonder how much of his lines were just improv from Clint Howard.
Yeah. He's had a lot of practice.
Turkey bungholes.
Yeah. Saying outlandish things as characters.
Yeah. They all condescendingly apologize, but then ask why he didn't come get them. And McAllister breaks Eustace's finger for falling asleep. You can really see why these guys follow him. He's a real motivational leader. On a ridge overlooking Santa Rosa, Colton sees there is only one way into town, so if he rides in, they'll surely spot him, since McAllister knows what he looks like, but he has no idea of what that Opie-looking doofus looks like, so Brooke volunteers to go down to do some recon for him. He tells her to ride into town, pretend she's there on an errand, and head straight for the mercantile. He tells her to buy something and casually ask if any riders have come through town, and then come straight back to him with the info. Brooke proceeds to repeat what that shit-covered yokel said to Colton earlier in his store about needing flour to make a cake since her mom can't make a pie since the apples taste like shit for being too close to an outhouse. She does so well, obviously pretending to be normal and not dead inside or a little soulless monster.
That was my one like major argument with the music was how goofy it got in that scene.
Yeah. It did actually remind me of Bad Lieutenant. Just kind of like goofy, pointless music. She leaves with the flower, but Cool and the gang are already outside waiting for her since they recognized her immediately from when Briggs was walking her to school. Also doesn't help that the saddle on her horse says Colton Briggs and it still has a bloody handprint from her mom on it.
One of my questions is, why would he send her into town with that fucking saddle on there?
Maybe he was sacrificing her to draw out the guys.
This will surely distract him. This little girl die.
I'm not killing you, so mama can't be mad if they kill you.
It's not me doing it.
It's not me doing it.
You can see that being his logic.
His logic, yeah.
I will come back and get my saddle, though. That means something to me.
I actually care about that saddle. McAllister asks her where her daddy is, while Brooke stares at him with a pouty look on her face. At the brothel, James gives Brooke some delicious Colorado Mexican food, which sounds great until you realize Colorado is where Casa Bonita is located. Now, don't get me wrong. Casa Bonita is an American treasure, but that was by far the worst Mexican food I've ever eaten. Fucking Taco Bell is better Mexican food than what we ate at Casa Bonita.
Oh, yeah.
Sopapillas.
Sopapillas are all right.
Those are good. Those were probably the best part.
Yeah, the sopapillas were the best part. Yeah.
That and the cliff divers. Those hunky cliff
dancing
divers.
gorilla.
Anyways, he tells his men to guard all entrances into town and to stay out of sight so Briggs can get into the middle of town to see a message they have left for him. Eustace suggests they kill Colton the second they get a chance, and Brooke says it sounds like he's the one who's scared, since James said she's probably too scared to eat.
Couldn't
James
Colton have come from any direction, really? Like, it's not like there isn't another way into town. It's just there's only one way with a horse.
There's only one way with an arch.
Yeah, with an arch.
By old Wild West rules, you have to walk through the place with the archway.
Yeah,
I guess he's old, so maybe he can't climb as good as he used to. But
it looked like it was just a wide open.
Yeah, it was wide
town.
open.
There's no wall or anything.
Fences.
I'm not jumping over
literally
any
any
fence.
direction.
It had to be walls.
Sacrifice my daughter to go into town.
James tells Brooke they're related since Colton Briggs killed his dad and turned him into the monster he is today. You know, this badass gunslinger he's shown no evidence of being once in this entire movie, who just tells everyone else to do everything for him while he sits around grinning like a dickwad.
You know, I think if there was a better script and a better movie, you could have that parallel between Colton's upbringing of Brooke, turning her into kind of the soulless monster that he used to be, and this guy is, you know, his inattentiveness to killing this guy's dad 20 years ago, creating him into the monster. But this movie just kind of tells you that rather than showing it or having it done in any well-crafted manner.
I really feel like it suffers from, you know, those lack of days, among other things. But yeah, I feel like that was maybe the biggest part, was just kind of like didn't have time to flesh things out the way that they really needed to in order to tell these stories. This is also like a combo of 3 different movies.
True.
It's like Unforgiven, The Outlaw Josie Wales, and like
True Grit.
True Grit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you just threw those into a stew and then put autistic people in the middle of it.
Yeah.
I feel like even with the time constraint, they could have shown Colton to be more of a soulless character. Like they could have shown him just murder his Colton's wife in cold blood, just boom. But they kill her off screen, and then he could have killed his gang. He could have had more than 3 fucking dudes with him or whatever.
Yeah,
he could have killed
one of them or 2 of them.
He could have. They could have done things.
He broke Clint Howard's finger though.
He did.
True.
I feel like killing Ruth off screen makes a lot of sense because she's kind of the emotional center of this movie. And like, you know, you need to fall in love with her a little bit to understand why Colton gave up the life that he had before. And to show her die on screen just, I feel like would have been too much.
Yeah.
I think you could have done it where you don't show her death, but it's clear he's the one that's like, you do that thing, that cheesy thing where it's on him. He's pointing the gun at her, looking at like towards the camera, and then you cut to outside the barn and you hear the gunshot. I think they could have done little things to kind of add in, like, this guy has no fucking soul. He killed her with no remorse. He doesn't give a shit about the guys that he's got with him. He's like, his sole purpose is to extract his revenge on Briggs. But I think I don't know.
We don't even really get a sense of how she died, which maybe is a good thing because, you know,
I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
The insinuation would be something really dark.
Yeah, like Colton didn't actually see it, so we just have to get to infer all the horrible things that happened to her. Yeah. We don't even get to really see the mess they left other than the bloody handprint stuff, but we get to see his reaction to it, and it's something that's pretty horrible. So,
and the writing in her blood.
We do see like a big blood circle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing she was just shot, but I don't know.
I'm guessing it was a little more than that.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Yeah, I don't want to. The Old West. We know what happened. 4 dudes. Anyways.
Up on the ridge, Colton decides to head into town since his daughter has been gone too long. Luckily, James, crack squad, just let him waltz into town while McAllister swaps out all the money in the lockbox with newspaper in case they decide to steal it and run. It's the oldest trick in the book. Also, James just seems to be getting trashed on whiskey this whole third act rather than trying to be ready to take out his revenge, and just seems to be counting on his boys getting butchered by Briggs, which means if they did, he'd be the only one who could stop it. So it seems like it would make a little more sense to stay ready in this situation. I don't know. Hey, I guess that's just me.
What's he going to use those pesos for? Not a lot of options in the old Wild West towns. Just drink or
Mas
bang
tequila.
hookers.
And bang
I
hookers.
will say the only the point where I was like, wow, that's pretty good acting from this guy was his drunk slurring while he's talking to Brooke in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like he did a pretty good job of doing that. He kind of had that real drunk feel to his speech. Same time,
which I guess it makes sense if it's
the whole idea here, just going to get trashed in this brothel.
I guess
saloon.
it makes sense if it was supposed to be a nighttime scene that didn't take place immediately before what ends up being the climax.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was the night before or something.
Well, the director said that he wanted it to feel like the ending of Unforgiven, where Clint Eastwood came into town while it was dark and raining and wanted that ominous feel of the killer is out, but they gave him 12 hours. He had 12 hours to film all of the night shots.
Wow.
He said he had to pull out an extra camera. So he had 3 cameras running at once so that he could get reaction shots in the moment. And he said he has a tendency to only get 4 takes each time he does any scene. So they had to run and gun do that entire shootout that we see in this movie that's about to happen in 12 hours.
Wow.
That's crazy, dude.
Give them a lot of credit. And I'm surprised that lady didn't kill anybody during that time. Doesn't seem like enough time for her to properly check weapons.
How could they get some extra shooting in at the range with those days cut off of their, of their shooting schedule? Must have sucked.
Man.
Couldn't take the prop guns out to go target practice.
I remember reading something where she had said something about putting live bullets into her guns and stuff, and wanted to make sure that the guns actually shot real bullets so that it looked more realistic. Why would you do that?
Nowadays, you have post effects for that.
Dude, there is no reason to have an operable gun on any of these anymore because you can do everything with CG and the guns are so good with the props that they look real. Even if they're not even firing blanks, they look real with just the little caps back in Vampire's Kiss. They've perfected that a lot since then.
Yeah.
It's just it makes no sense.
Yeah, I think you're going to start seeing them transition out.
Especially after Rust, man.
After Rust. And I know a lot of studios were kind of pushing for that anyways. There's just no need to. Just take that danger out, extra danger.
Completely unnecessary, yeah.
Yeah. McAllister says 2 devils can exist at the same time. So Brooke's dad needs to die so the devil inside him can come out, to which Brooke says,
Oh, I get it. You're crazy.
But she says her father will be here real soon and fix that. This is what I was hoping desperately, that this was an unofficial trequel to Ghost Rider. And he was going to come in and his head was going to be on fire and whipping people with his chain.
Show that he's the original Spirit of Vengeance.
Yeah.
The guy they talk about.
He
Wasn't
just
Sam Elliott.
transforms into Sam Elliott.
That would be awesome.
Instead of transforming into his skull, he's just Sam Elliott. Sometimes a man needs to pay what's owed.
Sometimes a man
paid in full.
As James stuffs the rest of the money into his saddlebag, he says he's glad they've had this time to get to know each other, since after he kills her dad, he'll be her new daddy. Which isn't creepy at all. Guys, we only have 12 minutes to go in this thing, and and all we've seen is this asshole chit chat with Colton's daughter in a brothel for an entire act. I'm starting to think the climax is going to be a little anticlimactic. Briggs rides straight into town full speed while doofus Big Mike struggles to open a door. Big Mike waits for Briggs to ride by, but wouldn't you know it, Colton jumped off his horse and was waiting for Mike inside. Guess there was a second unlocked entrance. Big Mike should have probably tried that one.
You'd think he would have thought about that ahead of time.
Yeah.
No, these guys ain't that smart. Big Mike stumbles out with a knife in his back with Briggs, Michael Myers style, walking behind him. Once he catches up, he slits Big Mike's throat, turning him into a big dyke. The waterway. Not the other thing. I want to be very clear. We're talking about the waterway here.
He's a big dyke.
You don't know what a dyke is?
Yeah, I don't get the...
He's bleeding a lot.
He's bleeding profusely. Never mind.
A lot of liquid coming out of him.
No! Jesus Christ. We're going to get canceled. Inside the brothel that has taken up this entire thrilling conclusion, James leads Brooke outside saying, "Let's go see Pa." Colton makes quick work of Puss in Boots, but Eustace manages to land a slug in Briggs' arm. James sends a couple Mexicans who are apparently part of his gang, even though that was never set up, to flush out Briggs from a mercantile.
I thought they were just two guys that he paid in the town to just go do it. Seemed like it.
So when Colton first starts firing at Boots, there's another guy, it's like a Mexican dude, who apparently is part of their gang now, even though we never established that at any point. I guess probably cut for time.
Yeah.
Something with Maria.
I figured they got into town and they just hired some people at the saloon to be his hired guns. He's some extra muscle.
I'm sure in the edit they were like, yeah, people will just assume that.
Yeah, I guess.
Where did these guys come from?
Who knows?
How many of them are there? There's only 3. So,
did you guys kind of find it weird that there's just a lot of mercantiles in this? Or like the writer never learned about any other old timey Western shops.
Yeah.
Only mercantiles.
That's all they had. They're called General Store. It's right there in the name. They did everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It could have been like an apothecary or a cobbler. Just mercantile. That's all.
Stable. Any other shops.
Mercantile. It's the only word I know, man.
The prop department can only build, or the set construction can only make one type of building.
We made one mercantile sign. We're going to use it, goddamn it.
Gotta use it, goddamn it. We got 4 days slashed off.
Yeah, there was one, I think it was before the first entrance into this town. They said that there was a storm the day before and they weren't able to actually properly dress the town. So they had to just roll with it and do it on the fly. I'm like, God, man, just sounds like a nightmare trying to put together your film with all these restrictions.
Yeah. I'm going to point out once again that James sends somebody else to go after Briggs rather than do it himself. Briggs kills the Mexicans off screen because just showing it be too exciting and or interesting. Opie yells to Briggs,
"Briggs, I'm calling you out. Ain't that what you boys used to do? Call each other out? Settle your differences in the street? Let's do this the old way."
Hey, that's the name of the movie. Old Way. Briggs comes out stumbling, much to the delight of the grinning doofus, while Eustace holds a gun on Brooke, and we see a sign in red paint that reads "Paid in Full" over the brothel. James says, "Hello, handsome. Remember me?" Colton says, "Weren't you my kid in that other movie or something?" Briggs says he doesn't remember him, which makes James sad since he based his whole life on getting revenge on somebody who probably thought more about the dump he took that morning than the kid he orphaned 20 years ago. Colton tells his daughter not to worry and that he's okay, while what will do for an antagonist in this movie tries to remind Briggs who the hell he is. James says they're going to have a showdown and Colton will have the opportunity to put a bullet in his head just like he did his daddy. Rather than fight fair, though, he gives Briggs an ultimatum saying he can either shoot him, which will cause Eustace to kill Brooke, or save his daughter by letting James kill him and take his place. Again, this guy just thinks he's the second coming of the devil, but won't even allow Briggs a chance. I mean, he has to fucking find a cowardice way to get the one up Briggs.
And he's over the moon that Briggs is injured, so he won't be able to fight him fair anyway.
Yeah.
Even if he didn't have this, setup of like, well, you either kill me or kill your daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like Commodus in Gladiator.
Yeah.
Cheating at the end.
At the end. Colton tells Brooke,
I have all I need. See that I'm tended to.
Echoing his speech about the dad from earlier, and tells her he loves her for the first, last, and only time in her life before gunning down Eustace. James then shoots Colton in the chest as Brooke screams in horror. She runs to her dad, while the worst gunslinger of all time celebrates what a badass he is, and giggles to himself like an idiot saying,
I did it! I killed Colton Briggs! I killed him! You hear that, Daddy?
Brooke cries over her dying dad for a second, then whips around and shoots McAllister once in the chest, then in the head, as James says,
It's you. You're the monster.
Fucking stupid, man. Colton gives
Brooke the devil, man.
She's the devil.
Colton gives Brooke a pocket watch with Ruth's picture in it and says, your mother, she'll tell you what to do. He dies and Brooke cries, wah, wah, my baby, my baby.
It's so fucking hilarious.
That was so awesome if that's how she mourned him.
She still has no emotion whatsoever. That's kind of the idea, I guess, is, they both find emotion throughout this, like that whole speech around the fire was kind of him realizing a bunch of things about himself and then her also realizing that she's the same as him. And then she comes out of her shell at this point. This is her kind of returning to, consciousness of emotion, though I'm guessing that she still is,
dead inside
for the rest of her life until she finds her love, I guess. I don't know.
The marshal we saw earlier rides into town is not surprised by the scene he finds. He tells Brooke he thought he might bring her in for what she and her daddy did, but he knows a judge would throw the case out since they were blind with rage over her mom's murder, even though he knows that's not quite true. But instead, he decided he'll tell the law she and her daddy saved his deputy's life, tracked down Ruth's killers, and Colton was killed in the process of their apprehension. Anyways, he decides to let her go home, and her dad will be buried a hero rather than a criminal, and she gets to keep the store, though she has no place to live thanks to her dad burning down the fucking farm. Her homestead.
He wasn't coming back, at least.
Yeah, he wasn't going back.
But I think
he was going to
suicide
both of them afterwards.
Yeah, probably. That would have been a fucked up way for the movie to end.
Just
kills Sarah and kills himself
James
in the middle of the square.
He fucking offs them. Well, we ain't got no home, so wow.
Ain't got no emotions anyway.
She asked the girl from the brothel to fetch her brother's saddlebag so she can get home. And I guess we're left knowing she went back to the town her mom was murdered in, homeless, to mind a mercantile store at 12 years old with a load of Mexican money she can't spend on the other side of the border. But hey, at least her dad died a hero rather than a caterpillar mustache sporting psychopath. The end.
She just goes back to school the next week. She's closer to school now. Man.
She didn't even miss the day of school,
Yeah. And she's right across the street.
The teacher was sick.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I guess we can get into it in the questions, but
yeah,
what does she do now? Anyways, yeah.
People grew up fast in the Old West. They can perfectly find and run a store at 12 years old. She can count jelly beans. Yeah, she can run a store.